Obienje. So Professor George Obienje has over 20 years experience in medical practice and clinical research. His research has focused on clinical trials, pathogenesis of severe malaria in children, clinical pharmacology of antimalarials and antimicrobials, as well as NCDs like sickle cell disease and diabetes. He is presently the director of the Center for Tropical Clinical Pharmacology and Therapeutics at the University of Ghana Medical School. He has mentored and supervised many postgraduate students. And so this year we would be hearing from his rich experience. So I would hand over to Professor Obienje. Thank you so much. Prof, please, over.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Heinemann. I hope I'm audible sufficiently.
Yes, sir. You are very audible.
I have been asked to give a short presentation on the research abstract. What are some of the features of an abstract? I'm accessing this from a place where the bandwidth is low, so maybe with your permission, I may, during the presentation, go off the video as I prepare to share my slides. Okay. So please, my screen visible? Hopefully, yes. All right. So I'll speak briefly on the abstract of a scientific paper. And the main aim will be to highlight on a slide or two why an abstract is important, its key characteristics, describe some of the components and or elements of an abstract of a paper, briefly touch on the types of abstracts, and then approaches on how to write a good abstract from the perspective also of what to look out for, what to avoid, and then maybe end on one or two bullet points that we may take for. I will say thank you very much for inviting me to make this presentation. I think it's a great honor to be able to speak to your distinguished selves. So before the first slide on an abstract, as we said, we're talking of an abstract of a scientific paper. So one slide on a scientific paper, there's a description by O'Connor and Woodward that says, this is a paper that describes experimental, theoretical, observational extensions of current knowledge or advances thereof in application of known principles. And such a paper is an essayistic or technical document that should report on findings that are sound, previously unpublished, namely original or novel, that adds new understanding, observations, and proofs, and therefore thus contribute potentially important information. The substantive part, which will focus subsequently, will be that this technical document termed the scientific paper, the last century also has evolved to acquire a specific format, the most popular being the so-called IMRAD format that comprises an introduction, materials and methods, the results, and then a discussion format. being as it is, we say that the scientific paper is a technical document. However, I believe you would agree with me that it would also be described as a subjective product, intellectual product of the writer, which therefore undeniably and unavoidably reflects one's opinions and beliefs. Obviously, insofar as these are supported by the observations or the findings from the work from which the paper was written. I think also we are all familiar with the broad structure of the IMRAD format of a scientific paper, that the introduction usually sets the broad frame for the paper, identifying the gaps and the research questions, which the method will then be designed to address this. The results presented and the discussion of what the result or the findings mean, limitations and implications for the field, therefore form part of the discussion in broad terms. So one will begin from a broad framework towards a narrow section that will be the methods and the results, and then again panning out to describe what the implications and the broad applications of the findings. If we take this as the basis, then the abstract is considered as a condensed version of the entire. Therefore, in simple terms, the abstract will comprise all these components of a standard paper in a condensed form. And an abstract will be part of a paper, whether it is a thesis or dissertation, a grant application, or a conference application, or a conference proceedings, are places that we find the abstract. So the abstract is a condensed version of the key components of a scientific paper. Why is an abstract important? I must have said that even though the abstract from the structure of a scientific paper will be the first part, it will be the section that one would usually write as the last. And maybe I may say one or two words in this presentation. Important is an abstract because unlike the entire paper, the abstract will appear in several locations. It will appear in indexing databases. Abstract may appear alone on a bibliographic database. And for reviewers, many reviewers and reviewers as well as readers, the abstract may be the only part of one's entire paper that they may ever become familiar with. So for most readers, a paper is non-existent usually beyond what the abstract